Our series that we're going to be looking at is about doing church life together. And as I said before, I really feel like this being a family on mission, we've focused a lot and talked a lot about mission. With this sort of season, we're going to be talking a bit more about family. But it doesn't mean that we don't, because we're still a family on mission, but we're going to talk about that. And I'm aware that we have a bunch of new people, and we can easily get, and we have done, we sort of set up our program, and we're very sort of strong outreach program and programs going on. But for the people that were, as we've sort of evolved into that, but I'm aware there's new people constantly coming in, and it's important that as our family, we learn to be family in a changing situation. Even for us as a church, the gospel's not a changing situation, and in many ways, the world is changing in some ways, but the world's still the world, and the gospel's still the same gospel. So I'm really keen. I really feel this is a season for us to work at being church together and growing at being church together. And we're going to look at things like speaking together, praying together, learning together, eating together, doing mission together, going through the difficulties of life together. So those are some of the types of topics we're going to look at over these next few weeks. And all of this is in a world where we've all got different situations, haven't we? We've got different life, things that are going on in our lives, different circumstances, different work, patterns and all that sort of stuff. So that passage that V read was my very first passage that was in the Word there. So I'm not going to read it again. But the subject I'm going to talk about today is about having more valuable conversations. And I was just, even as we were worshipping, I was thinking that it was actually through God speaking that his ideas came into physical reality, if you look at Genesis. And it's so often in the spoken word, when it talks about the power of life and death being in the spoken word, it's something really, really good. And both ways, good things and bad things. And having fellowship together and having more valuable conversations is something that we can look towards this year. If each of us can say, I want to have more valuable conversations, and not just with people who don't know the Lord, but with my brothers and sisters, to have more valuable conversations. I'm sure that is closer to this blueprint that V was talking about. There's a lot that happens in conversations. Jesus had conversations all the time, didn't he, with people? I'll do one, okay, and just say that good things happen in conversations, or they can do. John 4, verse 7, you've got the Samaritan woman. And this Samaritan woman comes to Jesus, or comes to the well to draw water. And out of a conversation, and it was a developing conversation as things went on. They started off talking about water and the well, and it ends up with a village giving their life to Jesus and talking about all sorts of important issues that changed her life and changed other lives through a conversation. I'm aware this was Jesus having the conversation, but the principle is the same. Life can happen in our conversations. So when a Samaritan woman came to draw water, Jesus said to her, "Will you give me a drink?" His disciples had gone into town to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, "You are a Jew and I'm a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink?" For Jews do not associate with Samaritans. Just want to say, and this talk might be a little bit all over the place because it's such a massive topic, but just commit your conversations to God and let God surprise you with what happens. I find that so often that conversations take a turn, or I meet people and have a conversation that I never expected to happen, or I asked a question which opened up something that they had not expected, I had not expected, and it brought life. And that's what I believe, that we can have more of those conversations. Jesus answered, if you knew the gift of God and who it is that asked you for a drink, you would have asked him and he would have given you living water. Sir, the woman said, you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where can you get this living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us the well and drank from it himself, as did also his sons and livestock? Jesus answered, everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again, but whoever drinks the water I give them will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give them will become in them a spring of water welling up to eternal life. And the woman said to him, Sir, give me this water so that I won't get thirsty and have to keep coming here to draw water. The conversation went on, the situation, but it started off with a random encounter. But Jesus went away early in the day and he prayed, and so a lot of his encounters that might have appeared random were actually God ordained and Spirit led. And I believe that, well, I know that God can lead us into those, and he does lead us into those conversations, and it will surprise you. I think that's one of the biggest things that I've come out with conversations, and I have loads of conversations, but I'm surprised sometimes at what happens in those conversations. Normally it's good, sometimes it isn't, but normally it is. In Luke 24, you've got two disciples after Jesus' death and reports of his resurrection. They were two disciples just walking along the road to Emmaus, and they were talking to each other. And they were talking about, well, Luke 24:13. Now that same day, two of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem. They were talking with each other about everything that had happened. As they talked and discussed these things with each other, Jesus himself came up and walked along with them, but they were kept from recognizing him. And just to say, just talking about what has been going on, even in your life. And they were talking about, do you know, they said somebody said they saw him, and the women said they saw him, and this, that, and there's sort of their doubts, and I was devastated he got killed. Jesus, I gave up everything. And they were talking about some of their doubts, and they were just having an authentic, confused conversation. Do you ever have those? Those are actually valuable conversations to have. Authentic, sometimes confused conversations. Some of us have more confused conversations than anything else. But what I'm saying, that having an authentic conversation, whatever it's about, when it's real, can be valuable. In fact, it is a valuable thing. There's negative and positives in conversation, so we do need to ask God to actually oversee our conversation. If I ask God to oversee my conversation today, this year, and all that, would you oversee? And you really sort of need to make it a daily thing. And sometimes even asking God to prepare you for the conversations you're going to have. You ever gone into a conversation and it's gone badly? It might have gone differently if you just asked God to prepare you for it in advance, and it catches you by unaware, doesn't it? And it will do. This year, it will do. You and I will have conversations that didn't go quite right, okay? Do not let that put you off believing God that you're going to have positive and fruitful conversations, more of them this year. Proverbs 15 verse 4, I'm going to read. Proverbs 12 verse 18, I'll do that one. This is just about saying, commit your conversations to God, not just rush in and say whatever particularly if there's a difficult situation. But Proverbs 12 verse 18, the words of the reckless pierce like swords, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. Anybody lack wisdom? What have you got to do? It says in James 1, ask him for it. And so he'll give you wisdom. So the tongue of the wise brings healing. Proverbs 15 verse 4, gentle words are a tree of life. So much of this, actually, I'm sure I've got this verse later on. Out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. So actually maintaining our spiritual walk, walking with him, allowing our hearts to be soft, enables us to bring that. Anybody done the opposite to that? Put your hand up, I'll take that as a salvation response. But gentle words are a tree of life. A deceitful tongue crushes the spirit. And this is why one of the things I'm talking about, authenticity. And sometimes we're frightened of being authentic, frightened of having real conversations. And this can stop us actually moving forward. We don't have to be this really bright, outstanding Christian to have meaningful conversations. Some of my best conversations when I was in my mid-40s were when I was struggling with midlife sort of depression type thing, like struggling with some of the issues of my life. I talked to so many men that were in the same position, and as I shared my weakness, Paul says, to the weak I became weak, and to the strong I became strong. I became all things to all men by that I might win some. And I found that to be the truth. Honestly, if we pretend that we are something that we're not, because we think that's what I ought to be like as a Christian, those conversations, they crush the spirit. They're not a good conversation. You can have bad conversations, and sometimes that's when you're pretending. It doesn't mean we open our heart to all and sundry and everything, because I believe talking about football is a good thing to do as well. Or haircuts, or your nails. I believe that's a good thing as well, actually. Anybody else believe that? It is. It's a really good thing. I tell you, it's so complicated, the idea of conversation, but you have to build relationships. So if you share your passions with other people and you find like-minded people and you respect each other's passions, you might have a more spiritual conversation later on. It takes time to build. We speak out of relationship, and that's important, but authenticity is important. I haven't found anybody yet who's quite as passionate about bowls as I am, so I have to... They go, oh no, he's talking about bowls again. But I do actually model that, because it's important to, we're rounded human beings, and that's how we have our conversations, and true spirituality, and it takes time at times. I told you it was going to be all over the place, didn't I? Proverbs 15 verse 28, the heart of the righteous weighs its answer, but the mouth of the wicked gushes evil. Ephesians 4:25, do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouth, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs. And, that encouragement is a massive thing. The speaking a word of, even a word of rebuke or whatever, can only come really in a place of relationship where you know that you're loved. And if you've got a real passion, say, I really want to rebuke a few Christians. But what you need to do is you need to invest for a long time to build really positive, loving relationships, and then you can rebuke them as much as you want, because you won't want to very often. So, is that all right? Colossians 3:16. I've been going on about this all the time now, but let the word of God, the word of Christ, dwell in you richly, teaching and admonishing one another in all wisdom. And that is like this heart thing. What's in your heart that comes out? Do not get drunk. Ephesians 5. Do not get drunk on wine, which leads to debauchery. Instead, be filled with the Spirit, speaking to one another with psalms, hymns, and songs from the Spirit. Can I say that that is wonderful? But you know, the other type of conversation when you're talking about football is also important. Because you can get so carried away that I've just got to speak spiritual stuff to people that it becomes sort of religious. It's getting that balance, and who needs to learn to improve? I need to learn and to improve. I think we all do need to learn and improve on this. Tell you one conversation that isn't a valuable conversation. There's never a valuable conversation. It says, do everything, Philippians 2, without grumbling or arguing, so that you may become blameless and pure, children of God without fault in a warped and crooked generation. Then you will shine among the stars in the sky as you hold firmly to the word of life. So I think that grumbling and complaining, I'm just reading through Numbers at the minute. Oh, with James. Hi, James. You enjoying Numbers? Yeah, so we did Leviticus, so we're getting through, so we do this share on WhatsApp, a Bible reading plan, and we're doing Numbers together at the minute. Brilliant, really enjoying it. Leviticus I even enjoyed. Don't know how, but I did. I enjoyed Leviticus. But there, goodness me, when people grumbled there, that was one of the biggest issues. It was one of the biggest issues with the people walking through the wilderness and leaving Egypt. Grumbling was one of the biggest issues with serious consequences for them. Hebrews 10, and this is important, and let us consider how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching. It's important that we're in relationship, and so that we can encourage one another towards love and good deeds. Our conversations, there has to be sort of like a practical application comes out of our conversation, so it actually impacts our lives practically towards love and good deeds. And so we need one another. We absolutely need that, and for all sorts of ways. Now, I've got, 20 different points here. Let me just tell you something. I'm going to finish this off. There's a real potential, as we commit it to God, that we can have more valuable conversations this year. And we will see fruit coming out of them. The first thing with it is just to say, Lord, I would like to have more valuable conversations this year. Simple as that. Lord, would you help me to have those valuable conversations? And then a practical thing is put yourself in a place where you have those valuable conversations. So, I really want to see more groups happening where people are getting together and encouraging one another, just very simply as Christians. And I think this is important. We need to put ourselves in a place. And there's one thing that I think we can be frightened of pushing a conversation forward. Be encouraged. So, is it up to me to ask someone, how are you doing? How's your walk with the Lord going? Even occasionally having that conversation with someone, they might say, well, actually, you think, well, it's not my right to be checking up on them, is it? I think if you're in a relationship, asking a simple question like that, taking it a step further, if they say, fine, you don't need to press it. Like Moses. I was reading about Moses today, I think. You haven't read it yet, have you, James? Not today. But Moses got in trouble because instead of just speaking to the rock, he thought, right, I'm going to take charge of this, and he banged his stick on it just to emphasize the point. And we don't need to do that with our conversations. We don't need to press it home. We don't have to force the issue. But we can put it before someone and say, look, how are you doing? How is your walk with the Lord going? Is there any way that I can pray for you? Little things like that give the opportunity for a conversation to come up. Be sensitive to God. It is important to recognize that there are all different types of conversation, and it's difficult I tried to look online, trying to get sort of, really sort of clear definitions of exactly how speech is divided up, but it's not easy. But sometimes it's information sharing, sometimes it's just spending time together and just talking about nothing. Well, that can be good as well. Sometimes it's just listening or empathizing with someone. When you're talking to someone else, they are really important, the person or the people that you're speaking with. It's not so much about you, it's about them. When we've got that attitude, we're more likely to listen and hear and to not rush in. It can be encouraging, inspiring. Some people bond through taking the mick out of each other, banter. In fact, if your conversations are all intense, it just becomes too intense. At times you just got to sort of just not go with it. I've shared a load of these points. Another thing that's never a good conversation: gossip, talking about other people. So, yeah, I heard Pearl the other day. She was talking about someone. Yeah. No, we don't. We don't. And we so easily get caught up in that, talking about other people. Those aren't valuable conversations. Talking about church actually isn't the most valuable conversation you can have. Talking about Jesus is a lot better than talking about church. Just want to say it very easily gets on the wrong track. Just to say, as you and I step forward, and I'm just about finished, as we step forward and believe God for more valuable conversations, we will get more valuable conversations. We might get the odd one that goes wrong as well. So can I encourage you on that? Don't, we can work that out. Can we ever say sorry to one another, by the way? Like we've had a conversation and we've realised we actually overstepped the mark. Anybody ever had one of those? Yeah. And sometimes you might have to say sorry, and I think we need to be willing to accept that, when someone apologises to us. Some people are oversensitive on it. I bet you there's loads of you that come away from a conversation and think, I bet they've upset them there. And you haven't. Anybody been in those sort of conversations, been too sensitive? Yeah. So it's complicated, isn't it? But I'll tell you what, God's going to breathe life into it. That's right, God is going to breathe life into this as we step forward in it. And it just takes time. Takes time for that. And sometimes you think, wow, what an amazing conversation. And the other person is like, yeah, we had a conversation, whatever. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. Just put our heart before God, and God will take us. And as we speak to one another in all different contexts, God will bring about all sorts of valuable conversations where He is going to work. We say